I still remember the day I stumbled upon the Atlantean Gardens, as if it was yesterday. The Appalachian Mountains had always been shrouded in mystery to me, a place where locals whispered of ancient civilizations and unexplained occurrences. As an urban explorer, I'd heard tales of hidden lands, tucked away from prying eyes, but nothing could have prepared me for the eerie landscape that lay before me. The air was heavy with an unsettling stillness, as if the very trees themselves were holding their breath. The sky above seemed to press down upon me, a deep, foreboding gray that made my skin crawl. I'd been driving for hours, winding through the mountains like a serpent, and finally I found myself at the edge of a vast, barren expanse. It was as if I'd stepped into another world. The trees loomed above me, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching towards the sky. The ground beneath my feet was dry, cracked earth that seemed to suck the moisture from my skin. A fine layer of dust coated everything, giving the entire scene a surreal, otherworldly quality. I'd brought my camera and notebook with me, eager to capture some semblance of evidence for my friends back home. But as I looked around, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The trees seemed to be watching me, their branches creaking softly in the wind like whispers. It was then that I saw it, a faint symbol etched into the trunk of a nearby tree, pulsing with a malevolent energy. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Something about the symbol seemed to be drawing me closer, beckoning me deeper into this forsaken place. And so, with a sense of morbid curiosity, I stepped forward, my footfall echoing through the stillness like a death knell. I'd always been fascinated by the stories my grandmother used to tell me, tales of our family's history and the secrets that lay hidden within it. She'd speak of an ancient civilization, one that had thrived in these very mountains, their legacy etched into the fabric of the land itself. I never knew much about this civilization, but the whispers of the Atlantean Gardens had always been a part of our family's narrative. As a child, I'd sit at her feet, listening with wide eyes as she spoke of the great ones who'd come before us, the architects of the gardens, the keepers of its darkest secrets. Her words were laced with a deep reverence, a sense of awe that made me feel like I was hearing stories from another world. Years went by, and my grandmother's health began to decline. She passed away when I was just a teenager, leaving behind a treasure trove of memories and a mysterious letter addressed to me. The letter spoke of the gardens, of the family's role in its creation, and of the weight of our legacy. I remember the feeling of trepidation that settled over me as I opened the letter. It was like I'd been given a key to unlock a door that had been hidden for generations. The words on the page seemed to dance before my eyes, each sentence weaving together a tapestry of secrets and lies. I felt like I was being drawn into a world I didn't understand, a world where the lines between reality and myth blurred. I spent hours poring over the letter, searching for answers that never seemed to come. It was as if my grandmother had left me with more questions than solutions. And yet, I knew I couldn't turn back now. The gardens called to me, their siren song echoing in my mind like a warning. I packed my bags and set out into the mountains, determined to uncover the truth about our family's legacy and the secrets that lay hidden within the Atlantean Gardens. As I stepped into the gardens, the earth beneath my feet seemed to swallow me whole. The air was heavy with an otherworldly scent, a mixture of damp earth and decay that sent a shiver down my spine. I felt like an intruder, trespassing on land that had lain hidden for centuries. Every step I took echoed through the stillness, as if the gardens themselves were listening to my every move. The trees loomed above me, their branches creaking softly in the wind, casting dappled shadows across the ground. I wandered deeper into the gardens, my eyes adjusting to the dim light, and began to notice strange symbols etched into the trunks of the trees. They seemed to pulse with a faint, malevolent energy, as if they were alive. I felt a sense of curiosity wash over me, mixed with a dash of fear. What were these symbols and what did they mean? I reached out a trembling hand to touch one of the symbols, and as I did, I felt a sudden jolt of electricity run through my body. The world around me seemed to distort, like a reflection in rippling water. For a moment, I saw glimpses of something beyond the gardens, twisted, nightmarish visions that made my blood run cold. And then, just as quickly, the visions vanished, leaving me staring at the symbol in front of me with a sense of disorientation. I took a deep breath and tried to shake off the feeling of unease, telling myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as I looked around, I knew that I wasn't alone in the gardens. Something or someone was watching me, waiting for me to make my next move. As I delved deeper into the gardens, I began to notice a recurring theme: cryptic symbols etched into the trunks of the trees. They seemed to be some sort of code, but I had no idea what they meant or how to decipher them. The symbols were unlike anything I'd ever seen before: twisted, curved lines that appeared to shift and writhe in the flickering sunlight. Some of them looked like they might be part of an ancient language, while others seemed to be simply random patterns. I spent hours studying the symbols, trying to make sense of their meaning. But the more I looked at them, the more I felt like I was staring into a void that seemed to be pulling me in with its very presence. One symbol in particular caught my eye: a twisted spiral that seemed to be made up of tiny, interlocking gears. It was as if it might be some sort of puzzle lock, but I had no idea what the solution might be. I reached out a hand to touch the symbol, feeling a shiver run down my spine as I did so. As soon as I made contact with the symbol, the air around me seemed to shift and ripple like the surface of a pond on a summer's day. And then, in an instant, everything went black. When my vision returned, I found myself standing at the base of a massive stone statue, its face twisted into a grotesque grimace. The statue was covered in more symbols, each one etched into the stone with precision and care. It was as if this was some sort of shrine, dedicated to whatever deity or entity had created these strange markings. I felt a sense of awe wash over me as I gazed up at the statue, but also a growing sense of unease. What did it all mean? And what lay beyond the gates of the gardens? As night began to fall, the gardens took on an eerie, otherworldly quality. I'd grown accustomed to the silence during the day, but now that the sun had dipped below the horizon, the air was filled with a cacophony of unsettling sounds. At first, it was just a gentle rustling in the trees, the soft whisper of leaves against each other, like a chorus of unseen voices. But as the minutes ticked by, the sounds grew louder and more insistent. I could hear the distant rumble of thunder, even though there were no clouds in sight. The sound seemed to be coming from all directions at once, swirling around me like a maelstrom of noise. And then, there was the whispering, soft, raspy whispers that seemed to be speaking an ancient language. I strained my ears to listen, but the words themselves remained just out of reach. It was as if I was standing on the threshold of some hidden world, one that existed beyond the boundaries of reality itself. The sounds grew more intense, until it felt like my very skin was being stretched taut with tension. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any stranger, I heard the laughter. Low, husky laughter that seemed to be coming from all around me, echoing off the trees themselves. It sent a shiver down my spine as I realized that I wasn't alone in the gardens, and whatever was out there with me, It didn't seem to care about my presence. The laughter grew louder still, until it became almost deafening. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything went silent. The only sound left was the distant echo of my own heartbeat. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, frozen with fear, waiting for whatever darkness lurked in the shadows to make its next move. As the night wore on, the whispers began to take on a rhythm. The wind itself seemed to be whispering secrets in my ear, its gentle caress sending shivers down my spine. I strained to listen, trying to make out what was being said. But the words were always just out of reach, tantalizing me with hints of things to come. It was as if the wind was taunting me, teasing me with promises of mysteries that lay beyond the veil of reality. And then I started to feel it, a presence lurking just beneath the surface of my perception. At first, it was just a sense of unease, a feeling that something was watching me from the shadows. But as the wind continued to whisper its secrets, I began to realize that this presence was growing stronger. It was as if whatever was out there with me was starting to make itself known, its presence seeping into my very bones. The whispers grew louder still until they were almost deafening. And then, in a moment of perfect clarity, I heard the words, a single phrase, whispered on the wind like a benediction. "Turn back now," it seemed to say, but it was too late for that. I had come too far and seen too much. The presence drew closer still, its breath cold against my skin. And as I stood there, frozen with fear, the whispers fell silent. The wind died down, leaving me standing in a sudden, oppressive stillness. It was as if time itself had stopped, holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. As I stood there, frozen in terror, the world around me began to distort and writhe like a living thing. The trees seemed to twist and contort, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers to snatch at my clothes. The wind whispered secrets in my ear, its voice a maddening drone that drove me closer to the edge of sanity. I tried to step back, to retreat from the horror that was unfolding before me, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. The presence drew closer still, its breath cold against my skin like a kiss of death. And then, in a flash of insight, I saw it, the true nature of the gardens, and the secrets they held. It was as if the whispers had unlocked a door in my mind, revealing a world of madness and terror that lurked just beneath the surface of reality. The realization was like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless and reeling. I stumbled backwards, desperate to escape the horror that was unfolding before me. But it was too late. The presence closed in around me, its grip like a vice on my sanity. I felt myself slipping away, down a rabbit hole of madness from which there was no return. The world around me dissolved into chaos, colors bleeding together in a mad swirl of pink and green and black. I was consumed by a sense of despair, a feeling that I was trapped in a living nightmare from which I would never awaken. And then, everything went dark. The pages of the hidden journal fluttered to life in my hand, revealing secrets about the garden's past that I had never imagined. The writing was cryptic, but the words spoke of a history shrouded in darkness and terror. I read on, entranced by the tales of ancient rituals and forbidden knowledge that had been hidden beneath the garden's tranquil facade. As I turned the pages, the air around me grew colder, as if the very presence of the journal was summoning something from the depths of the earth. The words spoke of a time when the gardens were not just a place of beauty, but a hub of dark magic and ritual sacrifice. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I read of the ancient ones who had walked among us, their presence still felt in every stone and tree. The journal revealed that these beings had been drawn to the garden's power, seeking to harness its energy for their own twisted purposes. And what they had achieved was a horror beyond comprehension, a corruption that had seeped into the very fabric of reality itself. I read on, driven by a morbid curiosity, as the journal spoke of the consequences of this dark magic. The gardens had become a prison, trapping the corrupted energies within their walls, waiting to unleash them upon an unsuspecting world. And now, it seemed, that time was coming again. The presence in the garden seemed to grow stronger still, its malevolent energy coursing through my veins like ice water. I knew then that I had stumbled into something much bigger than myself, something that threatened the very foundations of our reality. The journal's final entry was a message of warning, scrawled in urgent handwriting. Beware the garden's heart, for it is there that the darkness will consume us all. As I finished reading, the journal slammed shut, its pages falling to the ground with a thud. The air around me seemed to vibrate with anticipation, as if the very fabric of reality was holding its breath in expectation of what was to come. As I delved deeper into the journal, I began to uncover evidence of an ancient civilization that had once thrived in the gardens. The writing spoke of a people who had lived in harmony with nature, their cities blending seamlessly into the landscape. They were known as the Guardians, and they had spent centuries cultivating the garden's unique energy, harnessing it for their own purposes. I read on, fascinated by the tales of this long-lost culture. The journal spoke of a sophisticated understanding of magic, one that allowed the Guardians to communicate with the land itself. They were said to possess ancient knowledge, passed down through generations, which granted them incredible power and wisdom. But as I turned the pages, I began to notice something strange. The writing seemed to be changing, shifting from a narrative style to a more cryptic, symbolic language. It was as if the Guardians had been trying to convey a message that went beyond words, a message that required me to think in different terms. I closed my eyes, focusing on the symbols etched into the pages. As I did so, I felt a strange sensation, as if the symbols were coming alive in my mind's eye. I saw images of ancient rituals, of sacred geometry and mystical creatures. The Guardians had left behind a legacy of hidden knowledge, waiting for someone to uncover it. I spent hours poring over the journals, deciphering the cryptic messages and unlocking the secrets of the ancient civilization. And with each new discovery, I felt myself becoming more attuned to the garden's energy. It was as if I had become a part of their story, a thread in the intricate tapestry of their history. But the deeper I delved, the more I realized that I was not alone. The presence in the garden seemed to be growing stronger still, its malevolent energy coursing through my veins like ice water. I knew then that I had to be careful, that I was playing with forces beyond my control. As I continued to unravel the secrets of the gardens, the boundaries between reality and madness began to blur. The symbols on the journal's pages seemed to shift and writhe like living things, their meaning constantly shifting and evolving. I felt myself becoming lost in a labyrinth of corridors, with no clear exit or direction. The presence in the garden grew stronger still, its energy coursing through my veins like a river of fire. I knew then that I was on the cusp of something momentous, something that would change me forever. But at what cost? As I delved deeper into the heart of the gardens, the very fabric of reality began to unravel. The laws of physics grew flexible and malleable, like putty in the hands of a madman. Time itself seemed to bend and warp, stretching out moments into eternity and compressing them into infinitesimal points. I felt myself becoming detached from my own body, watching myself from outside as if I were a puppet on a string. I was no longer sure what was real and what was not. The gardens had become a realm of surreal wonder, where the impossible became possible, and the absurd took on a life of its own. And at the center of it all, I felt the presence growing stronger still, its energy building to a crescendo that threatened to consume me whole. I knew then that I had reached the limits of my sanity. The unraveling of reality had become a personal journey, one that required me to confront the darkest corners of my own mind. And yet, even as I stumbled through this twisted landscape, I felt a sense of exhilaration and wonder. For in the depths of madness lies a strange and beautiful freedom, one that allows us to transcend the boundaries of reality and touch the infinite. As I stood at the center of the gardens, I felt the presence coalescing before me. It was a being of darkness and shadow, its form twisted and grotesque. I knew then that I had finally confronted the dark truth behind the Atlantean Gardens. The being spoke to me in a voice that was both ancient and evil, its words dripping with malevolence. "You have uncovered the secrets of our past," it said. "Now, you must face the consequences." I felt a surge of fear as the being began to reveal the true nature of the gardens. They were not a place of beauty and wonder, but a prison for those who had been condemned to eternal torment. The Atlanteans had built their civilization on the backs of the damned, using the power of the gardens to sustain their own unnatural existence. I listened in horror as the being revealed the dark rituals that had been performed in the gardens, the sacrifices that had been made to maintain the balance of power. I saw visions of ancient battles, of wars fought over the control of the gardens. And at the heart of it all, I saw the true horror. The gardens themselves, a twisted and malevolent entity that fed on the fear and suffering of those who dared to enter. I knew then that I had to escape, to flee from the gardens before they consumed me whole. But as I turned to leave, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was the being, its touch cold and clammy. "You are not going anywhere," it hissed. "You are mine now." I knew then that I was trapped, caught in a web of darkness from which there was no escape. The being's grip was like ice, its fingers digging deep into my shoulder. I felt a surge of fear as it began to pull me closer, its breath cold and rank on my neck. I tried to struggle, but my body seemed rooted to the spot. The gardens around us began to twist and writhe, the plants and trees reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, a presence that seemed to be watching us from just beyond the veil of reality. I felt myself being pulled through a doorway into a realm where the laws of physics no longer applied. We stepped across a threshold, leaving behind the world I knew and entering a realm of eternal twilight. The being's grip tightened around my shoulder, its fingers digging deeper into my skin. I tried to cry out, but my voice was lost in the void. "Welcome to the afterlife," it hissed, its breath hot against my ear. I stumbled forward, my feet carrying me across a landscape that seemed both familiar and yet completely alien. The sky above us was a deep, burning crimson, casting an eerie glow over the twisted landscape. I saw visions of ancient civilizations, of cities built on mountains and seas. And in the distance, I heard the sound of whispers, a chorus of voices that seemed to be calling out to me. I felt myself being pulled closer, my heart pounding with fear and anticipation. What lay beyond this veil? What horrors or wonders awaited me? I took another step forward, the being's grip still around my shoulder. And then, just as I was about to cross into a new realm, everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the ground, the being gone and the garden silent once more. I stumbled to my feet, shaking with fear. What had happened? Had I really seen beyond the veil, or had it all been just a nightmare? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. For I knew that I was not done exploring the secrets of the Atlantean Gardens. There were still mysteries to uncover, still horrors to face.